Hello, welcome back. It is Monday morning. I am back at work, as you can see. Yeah, van still isn't fixed. Connor isn't available today to run me about. He's coming down tomorrow. We've got a full week's worth of work ahead. It's actually worked out quite nice. I've been able to get back to everybody that's left me messages and WhatsApps on my phone. I've had emails to get back to, parts to order. Like I say, I've got the whole week booked out and we're busy into the beginning of next week. So we really are going to hit the ground running. So it's quite nice to ease back into that. I've got online training to do for the rest of the afternoon. And I thought I'd just make a questions and answer video for you. I've asked you lot that follow me on Instagram. I've asked you to ask me some questions. Ask me whatever you want, and I'm going to answer them in this video. All right, so first question, or two people have asked very similar questions. Elaine and Rusty, the Defender, something like that, have asked me, have I had a good holiday and where did I get to? Yes, I had a fantastic holiday. So we went to Florida for 10 days. It's a bit of a last minute sort of holiday idea. Back in February there, me and my wife were talking about where do we want to go on holiday, when are we going to go on holiday, and before we knew it, we booked flights out of Manchester to Orlando. Then we found a couple of nice Airbnbs to stay at, and it's been really good. So we went out to the west coast of Florida. So that's on the Gulf of Mexico or America now, what is it? Gulf of America we'll call it. We went to 3 hours drive from Orlando out to a place called Cape Coral. We had 6 days there, 5 days there, 6 days there, and then 4 days up at a place called Spring Hill. So that was a 3 hour drive up to there, and 3 hours back across to Orlando where we flew home. It was really good. We expected the weather to be 25 to mid 20s, and it was mid 30s. Super hot, very humid as well, but yeah, kids loved it. We had a pool and everything to kind of go and jump into when the weather got too hot. First spot we stayed at the pool, and then at the back of the garden was a river called Gator Slough. So it was crocodiles and gators and snakes and turtles. Brilliant, really, really good. And then the second spot was on a beach. Saw dolphins every day, sharks. Pretty cool. It was really good. Yeah, we had a hire car. We booked a hire car, and me being me, got to picking the car up. What we had booked was like a generic SUV, and it's for an extra, I think it was like $150. You can upgrade. And I was like, yeah, I want to upgrade. He says, oh, we've got this nice big, what is it, a GMC Denali. Google it, or I'll put a picture up now. And yeah, that has a 6.2 litre, or is it a 6.6 litre V6 petrol engine? Yeah, that was cool. That was cool. And then when I was driving it out the airport, I was like, this is going to cost a fortune for the next 10 days. And it wasn't too bad. Petrol over there was $3.20 per gallon. And I think from empty to full was $75, which I think works out at about 50 quid. And we only filled up twice. So yeah, it was a good motor. Enjoyed that. So yeah, it was a good break. Feel nice and relaxed. Came back on Friday morning, back into Manchester, and to be fair, I'm pleased I've had Friday afternoon, Saturday and Sunday to kind of get back into the rhythm of things. I've never really been affected by jet lag before, but for whatever reason this time around I've slept. My head's been all over the place. I don't know whether I'm having breakfast, lunch or dinner. So yeah, good to be back. Thanks for asking. So next question is from Jack C. What is the most stressful breakdown you've done? There's not one that stands out. They can all be stressful in their own little ways, and I can think of two different scenarios which is stressful for different reasons. The first stressful breakdown is what we like to call the boomerang breakdown. And that is where you go out to a job, think you fixed it, come away, and then you have to go back to it, and you think you fixed it. No. You have to go back to it again. The boomerang effect. And one example of that is, I can think of a few years ago now, there was a 140, it was 2.5 hours away from me, and it was an electrical fault, the worst type. Customer complained that the machine went into total limp mode, couldn't do anything in the machine, it was useless. I turned up on site, started the machine, there's nothing wrong with this, machine was perfect, couldn't fault it, ran it around, tracked it about, didn't throw a fault up. Looking at the fault code, it was a CAN communication fault, so I checked plugs, couldn't find anything amiss, and got to the point where it was the end of the day and came away none the wiser. 2 days later, fault reoccurred, back to the machine, fault was active on the machine, did a bit of work on it, found some other bits and pieces which were a bit suspect, which might have been overlooked in the first visit, put everything back together, fault no longer active, great, feel like we've fixed it, dug a bit of fresh air, feel like it's fixed, great job, fantastic, came away. 5 days later, fault reoccurred, you're like, oh no. And you think to yourself, well, I've done everything and then everything again because I've been there twice now. I have got absolutely no idea what's wrong with it. Anyway, long story short, that turned into 4 visits before we finally got to the bottom of it. And yeah, that was horrible. And the biggest problem I had with it, not only was it a boomerang fault, but it was one of those boomerang faults that isn't on your doorstep. It's not just 15 minutes away where you can nip in, try this, come away again. It's 2.5 hours. So those 4 visits, you've got 20 hours on that job, just traveling to it. And that is what I absolutely hate. I hate those faults a lot. So that's why that's stressful. Second stressful sort of breakdown is those jobs that just seem to spiral. And I can think of an example of that. A couple of years ago, a customer phoned in and said, DX85, it was running perfectly yesterday, came to it this morning, it's turning over, it won't fire. No problem at all. 9 out of 10 times when you get an issue like that, you're going for fuel, aren't you? Fuel problems, blocked fuel filters. So off I went with a set of fuel filters on, no better. Before I knew it, injectors were out. Injectors away for testing, injectors knackered, went back, fitted the injectors, pulled the fuel tank off, flushed the fuel system, started the machine, it fired up, ran for 2 minutes, cut out, exactly the same, turning over, won't fire. And then you're stressed then because you think you've done all you can and you should to get that machine going. And yeah, turns out that small amount of fuel that was in that fuel pump continued into the new injectors and caused the exact same problem with those new injectors. Thankfully, those injectors we were able to remove and clean and put them back in, reflush the whole fuel system again, and everything was okay after that. But that wasn't a pleasant job. I didn't enjoy that, and yeah, that one sticks out in my mind as being particularly stressful. It's those jobs that kind of unravel and turn expensive very quickly. Don't like them. Don't like them. I like those sorts of jobs where you turn up, you spend 2-3 hours, you fix it, you know you fixed it, you found the problem, you can visibly see the problem, you put that behind you and you can move on to the next job. I don't like those jobs where it's like, have I, haven't I? Hate that. So this is 2 people asking one similar question. Chris439 and IK Fencing. IK Fencing asked me, what do I think of Hitachi and Kubota machines, and are they better than Doosan? And Chris was asking me, would I ever work for another manufacturer, and what do I think of Hitachi machines? So we'll talk about what I think of other brands to begin with, and Hitachi and Kubota. I don't really have an opinion, unfortunately. You'd be disappointed to know. I haven't really spent any time working on either Hitachi or Kubota to really have an opinion of them. I've had a go on them, I've had a drive of them, and that's just because we've had Kubota machines traded in, or we've had Hitachi machines traded in, and they do seem like a decent enough machine. I'd probably compare them to a Kobelco. Obviously they're built in Japan. They all have that similar kind of feel in the cabin, with the way the dashes are laid out, with the way the sort of feel, and that's not necessarily a negative point. My personal preference from what I've seen in cab of Hitachi, Kubota and Kobelco to the Doosan Develon is I do feel like the Doosan Develon have a nicer cab. My opinion, don't get at me in the comments, it's just what I thought and you've asked me. Having said that, whenever I've seen any social media where there's operators operating Kobelco, Kubota, Hitachi, Takuchi, they all seem to really like them. Hitachi, you know, they all seem to have a good loyal following of operators, and they all seem to really rate them for controllability, for comfort and things like that. I think if I was going out to buy a machine and I was going to buy a 14-ton machine, it would all depend on who the local dealer was and what their reputation was as a service backup dealer, and also how much it actually costs to run the machine. I think Doosan Develon machines are pretty owner friendly when it comes to servicing costs in comparison to what I've heard from other manufacturers servicing costs. And yeah, like I said, I think the key factor if I was to go out and buy a machine for myself would be comfort and backup, because you might have the best machine in the world, but if it's going to take a week, 10 days for somebody to come out and fix a problem with your machine, then you know it's a week, 10 days where that machine isn't working, so it doesn't matter what colour it is, does it? I think that's what's important. But yeah, I genuinely think that Doosan Develon products are good, and yeah, I'm quite happy repairing and servicing them. So I'll answer the other half of Chris's question, which was, do you think you will ever go and work for another manufacturer? Don't know. Who knows what's around the corner? You just never know, do you? At the moment, for me, going and working for another manufacturer would be like starting from not quite square one, because you've still got that general knowledge and troubleshooting skills that you've picked up. However, you don't have that background on one breed of machine. So in that respect, you will be starting from scratch. Like I say, I'm quite happy repairing and servicing Doosan Develon machines. I know what to expect when I go and do a 500-hour service on a 140. I know how long it's going to take me, so I know how long I need to set aside in that day to go and do that job properly. I do quite like my role at Gordon's, being able to plan my own days and work to my own schedule rather than having somebody in a call centre schedule my days. And you know, can you imagine waking up in the morning thinking, oh god, they're sending me all the way down to so and so to do that, and then I've got to go all the way over to there and do that. I don't think I'd like that now. I'm quite happy looking after my own area, looking after the customers within that area, and providing a service which I think has got a good reputation. Okay, this is a question from the Crim22 off Instagram. He's asking me, what do I think of the initial footage of the new Dash 9 excavators, and what do Doosan Develon have against the number 4? I'll answer the number 4 question first. I think you're referring to, obviously, Dash 9. Previous generation is Dash 7. Generation previous to that is Dash 5, Dash 3, and then it was technically Dash 1, but it was just LC. So they use odd numbers because in Korea it is seen as bad luck to go up in even numbers or use even numbers. That is what I was told when I asked that question. So yes, this next model is, or the next range, latest generation is -9. After that it'll be -11. They'll probably skip -13. I've got a feeling. It might be -12. No, 15. So we'll see when it comes to that. So yeah, what do I think of the initial footage? So if you didn't know, last week was Bauma. It's the biggest construction equipment show, definitely in Europe. It's held in Munich. If you want to see some footage, go and check out M. Ditch's video. It'll be out next weekend, I think. He's been doing a lot over there. I was going to go and visit Bauma with M. Ditch and a couple of other lads from Instagram, but holiday. What do I think of it? The new -9 looks really good. I think it's had a much, I don't want to say much needed overhaul, but certainly when you look at the 140LC to the 140LC-7K, bodywork and shape wise from the exterior hasn't changed an awful lot. The -9 has had an exterior facelift. It's also had, by the look of it, a new cab upgrade. The new cab looks incredible. It looks really, the layout looks completely different. Seat looks different, armrests, controls, just a total overhaul. And I think it's sort of like next level. I really do. I'm really looking forward to getting one. I don't know when we'll get one. Obviously it's just been released last week. Might be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months before we physically get one. But it'd be really nice to see if it feels as good as it looks from what I've seen so far. No doubt there'll be training to do on that. See what's different in that respect. But first glance, I think it looks really good. Let me know what you think. Okay, speaking of M. Ditch, in that last clip, he's asking me, did I do any digger spotting while I was on holiday? I did. Drove past, on the way out of Orlando, drove past a Ritchie Brothers auction house. And that was vast amount of machines of all shapes, sizes and colours. That was incredible. And then I did a bit of Doosan spotting. I think my wife got a, I don't know whether it's on this phone or her phone, but we were driving up the interstate and there was 4 or 5 Doosan DA30 dump trucks, and then later on saw a Doosan Develon Bobcat dealership. But I'll be honest, the majority of excavators out there seem to be Cat, which is understandable. You can imagine why. But yeah, I did do. In fact, the first property that we were staying at, there was a housing plot across the road. And a couple of days during the week that we were there, they were doing some groundworks and there was a link belt. Now I've seen link belt on Let's Dig YouTube channel, and I was just taking a look at it. It was a 140 zero tail swing and it kind of had a similar look to a Hitachi zero tail swing. Is there some kind of link there? I know nothing about link belt, or is it just an American thing, or what's the score there? I also saw a Bobcat 140, which is a DX140 LC5, which only went to the US, I think. So I saw one of them. What else did I see? They seem to use a lot of track skid steers, Bobcat skid steers, track skid steers, Takeuchi, Kubota, and there was a Takeuchi track skid steer working across the road from us. Yeah. It's a lot of graders, and seem to use a lot of loading shovels as well. Instead of having a 9-ton site dumper to run stone up and down the roadworks, they just get a loading shovel and scoop a bucket full up and take it over there and tip it. So yeah, and then I noticed a lot of the larger machines from 20 ton up seem to have the bucket straight pinned onto the machine with a thumb attachment rather than quick hitches. Quick hitches still seem to be kind of catching up over there. I don't know if you're American. Is that about right? Have I made an accurate assessment there? Let me know in the comments. So the next question is from Ollie Guns off Instagram, and he's asking me, what is the best and worst model of machine to work on and why? So I'm trying to think. Out of the Doosan Develon stable, what is the worst machine to work on? I think it's got to be a micro digger, hasn't it? I have not had much luck with pipes and changing even large parts on micro diggers without having to almost disassemble it completely to get to things. And you think, when you're a plant mechanic, you think of working on big machines, big hammers, gas axes, big spanners. Micro diggers, you're chopping spanners down, you're scratching the back of your hands, you can't even get your hands into places where there's pipes fitted. They're probably the least mechanic friendly, I think, to work on. I'm not a huge fan of working on the Bobcat Doosan shaped DX27s, so the generation previous to the 27 that we're on. They had a lot of weird faults and I found them pretty tough to work on to get to things as well, especially if it was anything inside the cab, trying to trace wiring, trying to run new wiring. They were pretty unfriendly to try and get in and amongst. So they'd be my least friendly out the Doosan stable. Looking at the whole kind of my whole history of uncomfortable machines to work on, Manitou were particularly tough. I remember changing a Manitou starter motor. Would it be like a 636 with the Perkins engine on the side of the machine? The Perkins engine was long ways on. You had the engine there, then you had a gap like that, and then you had the cooling pack, and the starter motor was all the way at the far end of the engine. And yeah, you couldn't even reach the nuts and bolts that held the starter motor on, and try to get it back on. I remember doing one of them in a field on a weekend, and it was horrible. So yeah, out the Doosan stable, it'd probably be Manitou, but again, my opinion. So best machines to work on, or best machine to work on. I always find a 225 20-ton class size machine probably the friendliest machine to work on for getting in and about it, running wires, chasing pipes, working on the engine, working on the hydraulic pumps. They're a nice size of machine where you can get in and about it. Anything smaller than that, you can start to get yourself stuck if you're like sort of doing head over heels into the slew motor and stuff like that. The only thing with a 20-ton size machine is, I suppose, the rams are quite heavy, so you need another machine to lift those rams on. But I suppose you have to go all the way down to like 6-ton before you can put rams on without needing another machine. So, but yeah, I would say 20-tonner. DX225, probably the most mechanic friendly size machine to work on. Yeah, and they're pretty bomb proof as well, the 20-tonners. They're kind of big enough. The work that they generally do is muck shifty work, so they generally work quite hard, so they generally don't give much after treatment problems. Yeah, 225. Thanks, Ollie. Okay, last question for now is off Jay Prin. I'm going to get back on with some online training, lunch break, nearly finished. Jay Prin's asking me, when am I coming down to Kurnow? Kurnow, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, for a pasty. I'm going to have a look where Kurnow is now, because I presume it's pasty, I would imagine somewhere like Cornwall, Devon. Kernow. Barnstable. Is that right? Kurnow. Oh, it's by the seaside. No, it's not, it's on a river. Oh yeah, it's way down there, look. Ah, it is, is that not Devon way? I think. It's there. Where that dot is. That's a long way to go for a digger breakdown. But yeah, if anybody wants to pay mileage and travel and fancies a little 500-hour service down there, phone me. I'll go anywhere in the UK, but it's going to be expensive. And I haven't got a van at the minute, so it'll take me a long time to pedal down there with a rucksack full of tools. Thanks for all your questions so far. Like I say, it's midday, so I posted those questions about 2 hours ago. What I'll do is once I put the kids to bed this evening, I'll do an evening session, so this whole surrounding might be a bit darker. All right. So next question from James Rogers. He's asking me, when will I get my van back? I don't know. What I do know is that it has had a new turbo fitted and the engine is still breathing heavily. So remember when I took the engine oil filler cap off and there was loads of vapour? It's not smoke, it's vapour coming out of it, oil vapour. It's still doing that. So what they have to do next is remove the cylinder head, and they're doing a carbon clean. So they're cleaning all the soot that's built up around the valves, inlet manifold, because obviously it has EGR. They'll probably have the EGR cooler off, everything on that side all cleaned up. Then they've got to put it back together and test it. And if it's still heavy breathing, then they get a new engine and put a new engine in it. They're at the point now where they're doing the carbon clean. So I would imagine by the time they put it back together, they'll test it Wednesday morning maybe. If it's okay after that, maybe Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, I can go and collect my van. But I've got a feeling it's going to be new engine jobs, so who knows? Who knows when I get back? It isn't ideal having Connor having to come down and drive me around the countryside doing jobs, as nice as it is to be able to look at the countryside while I'm being ferried from A to B. It means that there's a man less up at HQ doing PDIs and local breakdowns, so it puts a lot of stress on other parts of the business. So the plan is, I think there's a spare van up at Castle Douglas, which is a VW Caddy. If we need to, we'll fetch that down to Carlisle, give that to our parts man. He's got a Vauxhall Vivaro, which I will then use. I'll go up to the dealer at Dumfries, where my van is, pull a load of tools out of that and try my best to get away with whatever I grab. I remember when I had my Vauxhall Movano, it was off the road for about 12 weeks with a gearbox problem. I had the same situation. I was running about in the Vivaro, and every other week I was up at the dealer grabbing tools out of the van. It was very inconvenient. You never have what you need, no matter what you grab. So yeah, next couple of weeks could be a challenge, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, LJD 1903, thank you for your question. What is the most awkward repair? Probably a couple of those jobs mentioned earlier in the video. Awkward repair, what springs to mind is wiring repairs, because when you look or try to imagine how a machine is built, generally it seems that it's the chassis laid out, then the wiring loom put in, and then pipes and motors and all those bigger parts built up around it, including sitting the cab on top of it. And I've seen us remove cabs to repair wiring looms where the wiring's gone out of the cab and through a chassis rail, and you just cannot physically get to the loom, the affected part of the loom where it's rubbed, without major removal of parts, which is really frustrating when it's a couple of wires that might have broken. So that's what springs to mind. Wiring faults generally can be pretty awkward. This question is from YouTube. Edward Rees 10 asked me in a previous video while I was away on holiday, asking me if I'm employed or independent. I'm employed by Gordon's. I'm full-time. Basically how it works for me is I look after my own patch. The customers in that area contact me with their service requirements, and I organise that work for me to go and do myself. So I plan my days out, plan my weeks out, organise the parts for those jobs. It's not very often that I get jobs sent through from my boss, which is my service manager. The reason for that is when I started with Gordon's, it was only me and another lad that were covering the Doosan diggers at the time. He was looking after Southwest Scotland and I was looking after Cumbria and the borders, and I think it just worked better at the time. He looked after his area and his customers contacted him. I looked after my area and my customers contacted me. We didn't have any service managers. There was a general ag construction service manager, but as the business has grown and developed, we took on central Scotland, and now obviously we've got the whole of Scotland. There's more engineers that have joined, and so there's now a dedicated service manager and sort of service office team, and sort of I've just been left alone. I'm sort of forgotten about down in Cumbria. I'm over the border. Just let Al get on with his own things. So I think it's just because it's worked for me, why change something that's working? I think customers in my area are now used to it. They're used to phoning me. I hope I provide a good service to those customers. As things get busier, occasionally I do get help from Castle Douglas, where they'll send another lad down into my area to cover jobs that I can't get to, or I personally feel like somebody's been waiting too long for me to attend a service, something like that, and I'll get a day's work gathered up in that customer's area for Castle Douglas to get an engineer to do those 3 or 4 jobs while I'm elsewhere covering breakdowns and things. So the service doesn't hopefully get affected by me being busy. So that's how it works. I'm not self-employed. I'm fully on the books with Gordon's, and it's just sort of how the job's evolved. When I started with Gordon's, I was told I was going to be sort of left to my own devices, and that really appealed to me. It felt like the next natural step for me, to kind of look after myself. So yeah, hope that's answered your question. The reason why I've answered this question is it does come up from time to time on YouTube, and people do ask that very same question. So hopefully that's that answered again. So I think I'll call it quits there. Otherwise this will just turn into a long video of me sitting on my couch at home, and yeah, we'll get back on the tools tomorrow. There'll be a new video coming out on Thursday at 6 PM. Look out for that. I'm back getting my nice clean fingernails all grubby again. So thanks for watching this video, and thanks everybody that asked me a question. Really appreciated it. I'm surprised how many of you asked questions, to be fair, so excellent job. Right, back to it tomorrow. See you all in the next one.